You open your lessons to lesson number 8 in our outlines, and we're in Numbers, the 33rd chapter. Last week we talked about going to Kadesh Barnea, and it's going the second time. And of course, what happened after Kadesh Barnea the first time was 38 years more of wandering. And then we come to Kadesh Barnea this time, and we're going to see what happens there. And this Numbers 33 is really a tight chronological journey for us. So get your walking shoes on. We're going to get through hopefully these chapters here. Why might verses 19 through 35 be covering these 38 years? So we have them at Kadesh Barnea, and we talked about that last time with the idea of being the same place in the wilderness of Zin and so forth, and the encampment there. So they leave there, and we're going to come down, and we're going to come back to it soon. So these, between verses 19 through 35, are all the cities that are connected with the journey from Kadesh Barnea that we see there. Kadesh Barnea, this thing won't work right now for me. But if you see Kadesh Barnea here, Edom Seir, northwest is Kadesh Barnea. This is a map. You'll see a lot of turning around, and I think it fits with Numbers. Most of the maps I see are not like this, but this is a possible route, and I think it fits well with Numbers, and I'll try to show you. But they go to Kadesh Barnea, and all these towns here, Maseroth, Hashmonah, Mithkah, Terah, and Tahath, they could be the cities that are involved in that section. They didn't have room to put it there, on their way to Ebion Gebar, right at the Red Sea area, Midian, Ebion Gebar. So from Kadesh Barnea down to there, we have these 38 years of wandering. And then all of a sudden, we find in verses 35, and they went from Arabah and encamped in they encamped in Ezion Geber. That'll be where I want. And they they journeyed from Eben Gebar, and they encamped in the wilderness of Zin. What's the wilderness of Zin? It's back up here to Kadesh Barnea. Most maps say you only come one time to Ezion Gebar, and then you go into Moab, go into five lands. But there's 38 years here. And then all of a sudden you find them going back to Kadesh. He doesn't tell us what happens in between there. And they journey from Kadesh and encamped where? Mount Hor. It's very difficult to know which mountain that was, but it was connected with the Edom, and it's back up here. Mount Hor you have up here, northeast of Kadesh Barnea. So they went down, 38 years of wandering, and the reason we know that is because what happens in verse 38? Who does he put in here in this? And chronicling all these places that they went through, encampments. Who's there? At Mount Hor? Aaron. So what happened? They went back up there, and at Mount Hor, so how do I know that's 38 years? What year does he say that Aaron died at Mount Hor? He died there in the 40th year. You had to have 38 years of wandering, which takes them back to Ebion Gebar, and then they come back to Kadesh Barnea. Just tells you, I don't know if they stop in between, but these details it's not. And that's where Aaron, 40th year. And we've been here before. Go back with me to Numbers, the 20th chapter. What does Numbers 20 and verse 1 say? The children of Israel, even the whole congregation, came to the wilderness of Zin in the first month. That's Kadesh Barnea. And the people abode in Kadesh. Who died there? Miriam. And that's, so what was that? What was that time? It was in the first month. When does Aaron die? The 5th month. It's the first month of the 40th year. This is where they complain for about water, and then you'll find at the end of Numbers 20 when Aaron dies, he goes into Mount Hor. And in between there, you have the events of Balaam, and we move a lot of chapters. But in this, how long did they mourn the passing of Aaron? 30 days. He's in the 5th month. Could they have mourned 30 days for Miriam, too, when she died in the first month? So you have these about 4 months here. You have in between there, but he's now going, and where does we go now? From Kadesh Barnea, we go to Mount Hor, and we go then over there to can't read it from there, Zalmanah, and then Oboth. And then from Oboth, you're going on up there unto Dibon Gad in our Bibles. Then you go there south of Hesham. You go to Almon Dibothaim, and it's the plains of Moab. It's Abel Shittim at Mount Nebo. That's where Moses is not going to get to go in the land. So you have to have, this has taken us 2 times to Kadesh Barnea. We thought we went one time and we had to wander 38 years. You did. But we come back to Kadesh Barnea. And then that's when we go to Mount Hor. Abraham dies, 40th year. And then we come, now we're picking up where it's going to go into the areas of Moab through those things. So all those towns up there is in Numbers 33 that we have here. But this is wonderful just to realize we've been here in Numbers 20. And these things weren't in chronological order, but these particular places of showing the encampments and where they journeyed, you can follow this. And they journeyed from Mount Hor in verse 41 and encamped in Zalmonah. And they journeyed from Zalmonah and camped in Punan, and therefore Oboth, just right up the map that we have here. So look for that map sometime if you don't have it. A lot of our dictionary Bibles, I don't find that one. I find what I've always thought. You just kind of went down to Kadesh Barnea and you went up to Mount Hor. And that's sort of the problem is Mount Hor is put over here on the other side of the map instead of where this probably was. But there's no certain place where Mount Hor was. And therefore, it very well could be that. All right, question number, any comments on that? All right, question number 12. When the Israelites journeyed to the plains of Moab, as we saw there, we go back and realize the plains of Moab, Mount Nebo, plains of Moab is in that area. When they came there, what important city was nearby? Jericho. And that's where they went to in that area. So Jericho was the place they came to, and that's where they're going to be close by. From the mountains of Abram, they encamped in the plains of Moab, the Jordan at Jericho. And they encamped by the Jordan, from Beth-shemesh even unto Abel Shittim, the plains of Moab. Of course, that's where the book's going to end, this book. So we have some other events taking place, but that's when he's going to teach them some more. So we have then that take place. And then this is where we began to pick up the narrative and look at some of these questions. Question number 13. When Moses instructed the Israelites that they were to drive out the inhabitants of Canaan, what else were they to destroy? When you read chapters 33, verses 50 following, what other things were they to destroy? What's that? Idols. Can you be more specific? Stones. Idols. Where do they worship? High places. Molten brass idols. Images, but also stone images. And also they were worshiping the high places where they would go. There was idolatry being taken place. So you don't just drive out the inhabitants. You're also going to destroy those things. People say, we shouldn't burn the books. You know, that's not good. Well, God burned the books. He burned the things that were causing them to have their evil thoughts and the idols, and he destroyed them all. That was complete destruction. That's what they were told to do. Now, the question we want to find out is that what was the warning if the people did not drive out the inhabitants of Canaan in this section? They will be what to you? Yeah. Prick in the eye and what in the flesh? Thorn in the flesh. Paul would use that. And there will be trouble for you. And we see, that's kind of what happened. We don't drive them out. This could be a happen of catching on to their idolatrous ways. No, we're going to destroy those things. But the people are important. If you don't drive them out, they're going to be a problem for you. in serving God. I just think it's interesting, this last verse of chapter 33, verse 56. It shall come to pass that as I thought to do unto them, so I will do unto you. What did he think to do unto them? Drive them out of their land. What happens to Israel down the road when they went into idolatry? Driven out of the land. And that's kind of what I thought to do to them, I will do to you. This land is my land. It wasn't going to be there forever for the Jews. They could depart that land that was given unto them because they would turn against God, and therefore it becomes, I think, pretty instructive as well. So there are the warnings being given, and then question number 15. As we move through here, how would the land be divided up among the tribes of Israel? How would they be divided up? As we see here, as we go into, how it be? By lots? Yeah, in this section it is. We'll get more detail later. But verse 54, you shall inherit the land by lot, according to your families. To the more, ye shall have more inheritance. And to the fewer, then shall give the less inheritance. Whosoever that lot falleth to any man, that shall be his according to the tribes of your fathers shall you inherit. So if you have a lot of family, you're going to get more land. But it's going to be by lot that you have that. It's divided up. And the numbers part will mean you might need more land, because you're going to need food, you're going to need pasture, and that would reason with people have more. And we sometimes, well, you need to give the minorities more. They're kind of weaving the things up with trying to be fair with everybody. But this is survival. This is part. You're going to need that more land. You're going to get that, and indeed it's going to be divided up among them. All right. We look at, as we go into the next chapter, we look at what was Moses directing. Why was he directing how the land of Canaan was to be divided, but only dealing with 9.5 tribes? You notice here in verse 34, he begins to talk about the divisions of the land, but why does he include all 12?
The Levites didn't have land, and then some of the tribes already got land on the other side.
Okay, that's true, but that's only one tribe. We got 12 tribes. We got 9.5 tribes only being given this land. What was that? Reuben and Gad. That's right. And Manasseh is the half tribe. They already had their inheritance, didn't they? On the other side, on the east side. You're right about the Levites. They don't have land. They're going to be given it there, but they're going to be in all sorts of places. But just on that, he's just talking about the boundary here, and that's the point. The boundary here, notice how he begins with the south quarter, verse 3, and then why is the western border so short? One verse. Why is that? The west border is the Mediterranean Sea. You have to get any more specific than that? It's the Great Sea. So the south here, I could go beyond Kadesh Barnea and go from Mount Hor, Kadesh Barnea, and Mount Hor is going to be the start for the northern section as well, and he'll go on up there. But the west side has kind of been taken care of, and then we're going to go in verse 10. We'll mark the east side, and you get. There's a lot of Hamath was that way up there and all that sort of thing. But you can go down. You got the Sea of Galilee, the Jordan River, and the Dead Sea. There's the east side, and that's going to be divided up. That's not Reuben. That's not Gad. That's not the half tribe of Manasseh, because they already had it allotted unto them. And so, chapter 34 is just speaking about that, and they were to have that, and. So that's the division. We know it's by lot. More populated families, they get more, but it's going to be there. Who all were selected to actually divide the land? We have a list of them here. How is he going to divide the land? That's right. And so we're picking up that when those things take place, verse 17 and also verse 24, going through there. These are the names of the men that shall divide the land unto you for inheritance. Eleazar, he was the priest, high priest, but he's the priest. And Joshua, the son of Nun. So you just say, well, there's those two. And then you shall take one. My Bible says prince. New King James, I think, says leader. But there's two different Hebrew words in this section. Notice this first one, it's just the numeral 1. Take one. And the prince is just, that may be true. It's going to be one leader, which is the word prince, but sometimes prince talks about exalted one that's a leader. But one leader or prince is going to be there, but this is a different word that we'll see for the rest of them. So here these people are. They shall take one prince of every tribe and divide the land for the inhabitants. And these are the names of the men of the tribe of Judah. Who's the prince? Who's the leader? Who's number 1? Caleb. Did he deserve it? I think so. Caleb, the son of Jephthah. And the tribe of the children of Simeon. Shemuel, the son of Abimathad. I'm including him with this number 1 because it's the numeral 1 that's there. And the translators add, well, we need to add it, but in the text, they write it out. But it's just number 1, numeral. It can cover those types of things in the Hebrew. But of the tribe of Benjamin, he said Eliad, the son of Chislon. Now, and the tribe of the children of Dan, a prince. That word's different. He's still a leader, but it's more of a prince, exalted one, like you'd be a king or something. But the rest of these, you have Caleb and 2 other men. You got Joshua and Eleazar, they're mentioned there, but you got them. Now of the tribes, you have the rest of the tribes where they would have the exalted one from their tribe, probably a leader type thing, a prince. Each one of them didn't have a king, but they would have that. They would be the one dividing the land, be involved in charge of that, with representing the different tribes, and that's how they would be divided. It would be divided by lot. So we kind of pick up that as we go through the land division. How the Levites accommodated, even though they had no inheritance in the land. They were never to have inheritance. But they had suburbs outside of cities for which to live. And we see God speaking about them as well. And we have details about the suburbs. Jehovah spake unto Moses, chapter 35 and verse 1, the plains of Moab, so we're way up there, near Jericho. And it says, children of Israel, and they gave unto the Levites of the inheritance of their possessions, cities to dwell in, and suburbs. You got cities, and then you got outskirts. Translations have suburbs round about them. And you shall give it to the Levites. You shall give that. So all of the tribes are going to have to be giving up things that may be, a lot of them, they got to provide for them cities. And I think the Levites will have about 48 cities, something like that, when it's all said and done. So that was divided up among the people throughout the land of Canaan. And the cities shall they dwell in, and their suburbs shall be for their cattle and for their substance and all their beasts. You're going to have pasture land, but then you're going to have to land to grow your crops. And it would be 1,000 cubits away from the wall, north side, east side, west side, and south. And the difference is, well, there's 2,000 cubits being measured here, and there's only 1,000 cubits that should come out. So we're dealing with, what could that be? Maybe 1,000 came out, and then the other 1,000 was for the pasture land. Makes sense to me? You'd have 2,000 cubits total. That's just a half a mile. Half a mile this way, half a mile that way, half a mile this way, half a mile this way. That would be in the city. That indeed, that would be a town where you provide for the Levites. And that would be there. And so that's how it would be divided. Verse 4, the suburbs of the cities which they gave unto the Levites shall be from the wall of the city outward 1,000 cubits round about, or south, east, west. You shall measure out the city for the east side 2,000 cubits. That's why would it be 2,000? Because he already told you, one's for the animals and one's for your food, where you grow your food. 1,000 plus 1,000 is 2,000. I think that would fit that we're speaking about. And there shall be them the suburbs of the cities. Verse 6, and the cities which they shall give unto the Levites, they shall be the 6 cities of refuge, which they shall give for the manslayer. So all of a sudden we get in Levites, priests, the priestly part. Of course, the high priest would come from Aaron. But they would be in these cities that he begins to talk about, the cities of refuge. So they're getting their allotment. They don't inherit the land. They're God's servants, and God will provide for them. That's how he does that. They live in the suburbs. How many cities of refuge would be established when the Israelites inherit the land? How many would that have that? How many that would be? Verse 7 is where the 48 cities. Now here, how many here? The cities of refuge. 3, 2, 5, 8, what is it? It's 6. That's exactly right. And how would they be divided? 3 on each side. And then beyond the Jordan is always the east, where the sun rising is. That's what the scripture here says. Where the sun rising is, that's where the sun comes. Does it still come up from the east? Or we roll around, we look in the east, and it comes up. We're in the land of Canaan. We're in the inherited land, but also there would be recognition that Reuben, Gad, half tribe of Manasseh, they've got their allotted. It's all on the west side. That's why there's 9.5 tribes being talked about in this section. But they will all be there. So you would have these 6 cities of refuge when God gave them the promised land. So if those 6 cities were there, that means God gave them all the land that they were to inherit. I think that's just a wonderful point. Oh, they hadn't got the whole land yet. We got one day they're going to get the rest of the land that God promised them up there to that Euphrates and all over. Well, there were 3 on each side, and when the land was finally conquered, that's all they would have, and that's where they're going to be established. He's going to give them the land. They did inherit the land. They went in to possess it, and when they possessed it, you have these 3 towns and cities. Now we could go in there. They are interestingly kind of divided equally on the Canaan side and on the other side. It's just 3, you'll go here, in the middle, and below. And what was the purpose of that when we look at that? They were a refuge from what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Yes, but they were, you're right, and accidentally is going to be very important, but they were a refuge from the manslayer, to be more specific. The one who is going to be taking blood from the man who killed my daddy, or killed my brother, or killed my relative. And that's indeed, that's what they were to be free of, or have a refuge for. 35 and verse 12, and the city shall be unto you for a refuge from the avenger. The avenger of the blood that you shed, and you're guilty. He's on the warpath. Whoever takes man's blood, by man shall his blood be taken. It's just literally being done in the Old Testament. And we see all the details about that. What's right is that they accidentally killed, but let's just don't leave that and understand that he gives you details about things. That'll help us answer the next one. So he says in verse 16, now, verse 15, there be 6 cities he for refuge, that everyone that killeth any person unwittingly, there's your accidental, see it says, may flee hither. But I tell you what, how would you know? I think a guy who murdered somebody, that might be a place you want to go. It's a city of refuge. And if we work it just right, we may have 3 years for a trial. Who knows? And that's not even being contemplated here, because he gives you some details. And sometimes we don't think. We think, well, he accidentally killed them so they can run there. What about the person that doesn't accidentally kill someone? How does that work? He speaks about both types of people. And so we need to understand this. So let's look at verse 16. If he smote him with an instrument of iron so that he died, he's a murderer. And a murderer shall surely be put to death. If he smote him with a stone in his hand, he's a murderer. Verse 18, if he smote him with a weapon of wood in his hand, whereby a man died, and he died, he's a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death. I'm just leading up to our next question, but I want to look at this. The avenger of blood shall himself put the man murderer to death. Who puts him to death? He's going to be doing it. The avenger of blood. He's going to do that. And if he thrust him out of hatred, or hurled at him lying in wait so that he died, or in enmity smote him with his hands so that he died, he that smote him shall surely be put to death. He is a murderer. The avenger of blood shall put the murderer to death. He tells you that the second time. What was he finding refuge from? Being put to death by the avenger, to be more exact. When he meeteth him. And he could be anywhere. You don't have to be before a judge. And that's why they had to stay in the city if they were innocent. And so I remember the movie Hacksaw Ridge, and I remember it was a tough movie. But it opens up with the two boys in West Virginia, and they're doing fighting, and the drunken father, he just lets them fight and says, whoever wins, I'll whip them. Don't worry about it, Mom. But the one boy picked up a brick and hit his brother in the head. And, of course, the boys were just fighting. They were roughhousing. But that was a serious point, and the father took it out on him, carried the boy, and finally he survives. But he looks at that, he looks up there at his father was a drunk, but he fought in World War I, and he was trying to, he hated war and didn't want his boys to go to war, but Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor, they're going to war. But he looked up there, the little boy did, and he thought he killed his brother. He looked up, thou shalt not murder. He broke one of the 10 Commandments. And he felt so bad. But the boy survived. But that started him out being a conscientious objector. And he really was a real live person. He fought in World War II. Okinawa saved 75 men who died in the battlefield. He went up at night and got them without a gun. And he was honored for that. He was Seventh-day Adventist. He didn't work on a Sabbath, and he didn't touch a gun, because that was another part of the story where he tried to save his mother because his father beat her too. But he would never touch a gun, and end up they made fun of him as a conscientious objector. They finally turned their hearts to realize when they had to go up the second time after they saw all the blood and guts and all the stuff, they said, we're not going without him. We're not going without him. And he ain't going on a Saturday. But he prayed to God and said, God says okay. And that's when he went up again and saved a lot of people. All right, I'm thinking about thou shalt not murder. Did the boy want to kill his brother? I mean, in the fight, he said, I'll knock you out. but to kill him, no. But there will be an avenger of blood, and we see that this is taking place, and it's going to happen when they were after him. Now, could you get a plea deal if the murderer was in the new land? We won't do the death penalty, but you know what? You want to plead for something else? There's no plea deal here. And this is the reason I say that. When that happened, you're to put him to death. There's no way that was going to be released from the guilty. So you had to, when you come into the land, come into that city, you had to be up front. I accidentally did something. But if he thrust him suddenly without enmity, or hurled upon him anything, verse 22, without lying in wait, or without any stone, whereby a man may die, seeing him not, and it cast upon him so that he died, and he was not his enemy, neither sought his harm. All these little details are there. Then the congregation shall judge between the smiter and the avenger of blood. That's who you're getting relief from. According to these ordinances, and the congregation shall deliver the manslayer out of the hand of the avenger. That's who you get refuge from. And the congregation shall restore him to his city of refuge, right? So you're going to know up front. We're going to make a decision today whether you're a murderer or not. And they're going to be looking at that. So if the person had done that, they would be put to death, not saved. But you would be then allowed to be in the city of refuge whether he had fled. He's got one of the 6. And he shall dwell therein until the death of the high priest. Why would the high priest be around there? Because that's where the allotment, those are cities of allotment to Levites. And who was anointed with the holy oil. But this may be dealing where the high priest lived. But if manslayer shall say at the time, go beyond the border of the city of refuge, if he goes beyond that, whether he fleeth, and the avenger of blood find him without the border of the city of refuge, the avenger of blood shall slay the manslayer, and he shall not be guilty of blood, because he should have remained in the city of refuge until the death of the high priest. But after the death of the high priest, the manslayer shall return to the land of his possession. That was God's law. There's no plea deal. Verse 31, moreover, you shall take no ransom for the life of the murderer that is guilty of death, but he shall surely be put to death. You shall take no ransom for him that is fled to the city of refuge, that he may come again to dwell in the land until the death of the priest. We don't want him to wait that long. Let's let him out. No, you're not going to buy a ransom there either. So you shall not pollute the land wherein you're for blood, with blood, innocent killing. You're not going to allow that. You're going to put him to death. It polluteth the land, and no expiation can be made for the land for the blood that is shed therein, but the blood of him that shed it. That's how it's going to have to be done. And thou shalt not defile the land which you inhabit, in the midst of which I dwell, for I, Jehovah, dwell in the midst of the children of Israel. And you don't think God is for capital punishment? Yeah, that's Old Testament, but he said New Testament, the government doesn't wield that sword in vain. What's that sword all about? Just flashing around? It's for severing heads. It's for putting people to death. And God indeed has set forth there. But that's why these cities of refuge. Sometimes I just flee for safety till I get a good trial, maybe a good lawyer. They're going to work out real quickly what had happened. And if you're innocent, they'll protect you from that. But if you ever got out of that town, that avenger may be looking for you a while. And wherever they meet you, without guilty of any shedding of blood, shedding of innocent blood, they will take your life. That's what he thinks about taking lives. Zelophehad, we're up against him again. He's been dead for a while, but we've seen him because he had these 5 daughters. He had no sons, and we picked up them back around Numbers 27, somewhere along there, where we had a problem with them. That's Numbers 27, and all of a sudden, as we close, we've got another issue taking place. And so, why was the issue regarding the daughters of Zelophehad brought up again? Because in Numbers 27, the girls brought it up. Why don't we have land? And they talked to God about it. He said, that's a good thing. So you're going to have land. Now we've got another issue with this thing. And this is about the 3rd time they've been mentioned here, but Numbers 27 is where we got it. So what was the issue here as we come to the close of Numbers 36? Yes, can I marry somebody in another tribe? And Hogla and all her sisters, what does God tell them to do? No. And what's the reason for that? Because it was important that you have your allotment with your tribe, with your family. If you married another tribe, they bring up the point. Does that mean the time of Jubilee? When all the land goes back to their possessors, that indeed we've now given it to another tribe, now it's going to be in their tribe? That's their argument. And it's a good one. And how does God rule? He said, no. So verse 9, so shall no inheritance remove from one tribe to another tribe. For the tribes of the children of Israel shall cleave every one to his own inheritance. And they have their inheritance, and therefore it's going to stay there. Even as Jehovah commanded Moses, so did the daughters of Zelophehad, from Melah, Tirzah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Noah. That's a girl's name? The daughters of Zelophehad were married unto their father's brothers' sons. and married their cousins. But they were remaining in the tribe. They were remaining in the tribe that indeed of their fathers. They're going to honor him, though he did not have sons. That name would be connected with him. That was important with God and the people. So they were married under the families of the sons of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, and their inheritance remained in the tribe of the family of their father. And he sums up, these are the commandments and the ordinances. When you look at all of what God has commanded in Numbers, especially at this latter part, which Jehovah commanded Moses unto the children of Israel, where? Where are we? Where are we now when this happens? Well, way up here in the plains of Moab, around Mount Nebo, the principal city is Jericho, and that's where he stays. The 40th year has come. We're going to go to the end of that, and what book do we go to next? That will be helpful. Book of Joshua. And we're going to take Jericho. And they're going to be involved in taking that lead. And so you have Deuteronomy still teaching a new generation, preparing them for the end of this 40-year wilderness. But Numbers deals with after 2 years they come out of Egypt. Well, now the next 38 years because they rebelled against God and not taking the land when they're supposed to. So we have all these, the Pentateuch is all together involved there, and we're able to realize we're numbered. Moses hasn't died yet in Numbers. Aaron has. And we know he died in that 5th month of the 40th year. So we're at the end of that, and these are the things that God has told us about. I know we went through that pretty quickly, but anything you want to add to the questions? David. Yeah. It's kind of cruel and unusual punishment. Just kill a guilty one. Any other thoughts?
I find it interesting that even though those who accidentally murdered, actually pushed him and he fell and died, he doesn't get forgiven. He's not absolved of the guilt of doing that. He's just protected. But if he goes, the avenger can still come get him and be free and clear in doing so, because that man is still guilty of blood, whether it was accidental or not.
There's a life that was taken, that's true.
I mean, if the high priest died, there are some ways for him to go back. But that's a long process, probably.
It wasn't premeditated murder. But he's still.
Guilty of it. He's not just,
Yep.
okay, well, sorry you did it. I guess let's let you off. Like you said, there's no plea deal. You're still guilty.
Right.
You still face the consequences if you leave. So it's not just you're free to go back to business.
But he's not guilty of doing it on purpose. Let's put it that way. That's right. And the thing is, the high priest dying, you had to have another high priest. That kind of started things over like Jubilee does. And then he could go back to his possession and wonder if the avenger of blood came after them. I think that would be premeditated murder there. He's not avenging anybody because that was taken care of. But that's true. You did take a life, and that's not ignored either, is it? That's a good point. Okay, we'll stop there. Joshua lessons are in the introduction. We'll start with, or the next time, lesson 1's there for you to pick up, and we'll continue on. Thank you.